prolific researcher. I highly recommend you follow him on Twitter. He has his piece up. The GOP fears Mueller's collusion bias lives on in a final report. I've told you from the start, the whole purpose of the Mueller investigation is to cover up all this nonsense, right? So Sperry writes in the piece that they're afraid that it's going to be tainted, and it's going to be tainted in such a way to make this collusion story appear real. Why, Joe? Because remember, the FISA is plan B. The dossier is the FISA. If Mueller can make collusion at least appear real in his report, it'll make the dossier seem somewhat credible and save the reputation of the FBI. Okay, Sperry writes in the piece. First snippet. There you go. Now everyone on YouTube is going to wait for the sign, okay? Senior Republicans on committees on Capitol Hill have reviewed some of the same evidence Mueller's investigators have examined, complain that the special counsel's team of mostly Democrat prosecutors have shaded evidence in charging documents filed against a number of Trump associates for process crimes unrelated to collusion, mostly lying to investigators to suggest a broad conspiracy. They say that the special counsel and prosecutors misled the court and there we go. And the media by, among other things, editing the contents of emails. Listen to this. This gets great. To cast a sinister shadow on otherwise innocuous communications among Trump advisors, and by omitting exculpatory information. Wow, that was a really long way of saying the Mueller team are a bunch of hacks that are fabricating a story out of thin air about Russian collusion, selectively using emails. And when the emails say the opposite of what they want you to believe, that Trump colluded with the Russians, what do? They leave those emails out. Exhibit 1. Here we go. George Papa D. Papa Dizzle. Papa D is the key. I did the sign. I'm waiting. Hey, the sign. We got to get the sign. They cite, here we go, about Papadopoulos. In the charging documents against Papadopoulos, quoting Paul Sperry's piece, this is fascinating. They cite charging documents filed against Trump advisors George Papadopoulos, Michael Cohen, and Lieutenant General Flynn as examples. The indictments that were made by the Mueller team are very questionable. And there's pieces of them that read like Russian spy novels, said Republican Devin Nunes, the top Republican on the House Intel Committee. This was done on purpose, he added, to create a narrative to make the American people think, as they were indicting these people, that this had to do with collusion with the Trump campaign and Russia. What is Nunes referring to? At one point in the charging documents, there's a footnote that cites an email with mentioning Papadopoulos and mentioning low-level campaign surrogates going to Russia. Russia, as Tucker Carlson goes, Russia. Joe, they got him. They got him. Bingo, winner, chicken dinner. Ew. In the charging document for Papadopoulos, to be clear, there's a footnote in there about low-level campaign surrogates. In other words, Papadopoulos going to Russia. That's it, Joe. What else? We got it. Collusion. It's done. There we go. Hook, line, and sinker. Let's get a fishing pole in here. We got him. Get him in. All right. What's the problem with that? Well, what's left out of the charging document? An email from the Trump campaign saying we won't be doing these meetings, forbidding them from going to Russia.
Yep.
Dude, this is what I'm talking about. Let me hat tip my buddy 279 too, because he brings this up all the time. Ladies and gentlemen, evidence does not mean a crime was committed. Okay?
Right.
Can we be clear on this? That's why it's called evidence and not proof. Joe, simple question. I'm going to go back to why this matters with Papadopoulos and how disingenuous this Mueller scam is.
Okay.
If a bank is robbed in your neighborhood, yes. I know where Joe lives, and Joe is near that bank at the time it is robbed, would that be considered evidence that you could have robbed the bank?
It could be, yes.
Yes, it could be.
Certainly.
Yes, correct. Now, is that proof beyond a reasonable doubt or evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that Joe robbed? No, there are a lot of reasonable doubts.
Right.
Joe could have been going to the supermarket. Joe could have just been driving by while the bank was robbed. If we find out later that Joe, in fact, has receipts that he was in the TJ Maxx down the block at that time. It was just passing by and is on video camera, time-stamped in the TJ Maxx while the bank is being robbed. Mm-hmm. There is evidence Joe was there at the scene of the bank robbery and evidence suggesting Joe didn't rob the bank.
Thank you.
Now thank you, poor Joe. Do you understand now why negative information, there's negative information about Trump is not a standard. Negative information meaning what? That George Papadopoulos is in some email chain about low-level campaign surrogates going to Russia? Wow, that sounds pretty negative if you're trying to prove Russian collusion. Until you read the email with the Trump campaign telling them, we're not going to Russia, and you're not either. We will not be doing these meetings. That's anti-evidence. Do you understand now why the Republicans are worried? Folks, to be crystal clear, nobody rational in D.C. on the Republican side, or even a rational Democrat, if there is one left anymore, is worried about Trump collusion. There's no collusion. It's dead. Forget it. It's not going to happen. Don't worry about that. That is not going to be in there. But they are legitimately worried that the Mueller report is going to contain evidence entirely out of context. Context matters. Mm-hmm. There was a mugging on Armacost Corner. Joe had to do it. How do we know? Because he was home at that time. So? What does that mean? Well, he was in the area. So?
No.
So were 5,000 other people. Right. It had to be Joe because I think he colluded with the Russians. What are you talking about? This is what Mueller is doing. He is painting a picture for you. Put a pretty little tree like Bob Ross. Put a little lake, little river. Look at this gorgeous little waterfall. Remember Bob Ross used to put me to sleep.
Nice little Russian over there. Yeah, the Russian's going to the park.
Nice little Russian, right? Bob Mueller. Mueller is the Bob Ross of federal prosecutors.
A little low-level campaign worker right over there. Oh, happy campaign worker.
Stop. You're going to make me laugh.
I will.
But more fun when I was in a bad mood. Don't make me laugh. Okay, so just let's dial back a bit here. What we're talking about again. Two things in the report. Negative information out of context, which I wouldn't be surprised about at all, and efforts to rescue the dossier. The Papadopoulos portion of it is going to be an effort to rescue something other than the dossier. The Papadopoulos portion is going to be an effort to rescue the DOJ, the FBI, or, because we're not sure who was managing this, the international intel community that act as friendlies with the United States from their entrapment scheme using Joseph Mifsud against Papadopoulos. Paint Papadopoulos as a really bad guy. That way, when it comes out that friendly intel agencies were trying to entrap George Papadopoulos on behalf of the Obama administration, intel officials and others who wanted to make him look like a bad guy to destroy the Trump campaign and paint him with this Russian colluder label that was nonsense. If we can paint Papadopoulos in the Mueller report as a really bad guy, we will rescue component one, the entrapment scheme. Component two that needs to be rescued is going to be the spying scheme, which intersects with Carter Page and the dossier. They're not discrete elements, but somebody initiated this human spying scheme. So again, I'm telling you, the Mueller report, I find it highly likely, based on Mueller's previous behavior in charging documents, that the second component of this is going to be to paint Flynn as a really bad guy as well in his report. He prosecuted Papadopoulos. He prosecuted Flynn. Now, we're basing this on Sperry's piece. This is the part about Mike Flynn. On Sperry's piece and his reading of the charging documents, which we covered on the show before. Remember, in the charging documents for Papadopoulos, hold that up there. Hold that up there for a second. In the charging documents for Papadopoulos, he doesn't mention that the emails about don't go to Russia. Look what happened with Flynn. From the piece. Republicans say the special counsel also demonstrated collusion bias in its complaint against Mike Flynn, former prosecutors say. Mueller charged the retired general with lying to FBI investigators about his conversation with the Russian ambassador during the transition, even though one of the investigators, Trump critic Peter Strzok, quote, had the impression at the time that Flynn was not lying or did not think he was lying, according to the FBI's own internal documents. In fact, former FBI Director James Comey has said Flynn provided truthful answers and wasn't intentionally misleading investigators on January 24th, 2017, when he was questioned. Folks, are we sensing a little bit of a pattern here? So Papadopoulos gets prosecuted by Mueller for nothing related to collusion, but writes about a whole bunch of ridiculous Russia nonsense in the charging documents, unrelated entirely to misstatements to the FBI Papadopoulos made. In there, he leaves out the exculpatory information telling Papadopoulos not to go to Russia. And he repeats the exact same pattern with Mike Flynn. Now, with Papadopoulos, they got to keep the heat off the entrapment. They tried to entrap him. With Flynn, they have to keep the heat off the human spying component, which was being, I have no question anymore, was being managed through Stefan Halper, a noted informant for the CIA and FBI that appears has a bug in for Flynn. I don't know who puts him up to it, but as far back as 2014, appears to be informing on Mike Flynn, who is a noted critic of the Obama administration and their policy on both terrorism and the Iran deal. They have to paint Papa D as a bad guy because then they can say, what, Joe? Well, we were trying to entrap him because we thought he was Russian. He was dealing with the Russians. They have to paint Flynn as a bad guy. Why were you spying on Flynn using a human intelligence asset, a spy? Well, he was a really bad guy, Joe, so we just had to do it.
Oh, okay, cool.
Watch for this in the Mueller report. Watch for how they write about Papadopoulos. Watch to see if they include the fact that the FBI didn't think he was lying, even though they charged him with lying. Watch how that is all magically left out. It's negative information. Watch. If you don't know that the negative information is spin left out of context, you'll be under the assumption that this is in some way damaging. An email to set up a foreign meeting in Russia isn't even damaging in and of itself. It's even less damaging when you find out the campaign said, we're not doing those meetings. I got one more here for you. Let's get to this ad. These are great companies. They're here with us. They love to be here. They love to talk to you, and I like working with them. Today's show also brought to you by our buddies at Policy Genius. Can you believe it's already April? It's crazy. Time is a habit of getting in the way here, you know. But if you have a mortgage, kids, or anybody, depending on your income, you're going to have to spend some of that precious time getting life insurance. If you need life insurance, but you don't want to spend a ton of time going around comparing quotes, folks, listen, it can be a pain. Not with Policy Genius. Give Policy Genius a try. It's very, very easy to use, super user-friendly. Don't spend all day on the phone. Just go to Policy Genius, policygenius.com. Policy Genius is the easy way to buy life insurance online. In just 2 minutes, you can compare quotes from the top insurers and find a price that works for you and a plan that works for you. Once you apply, the Policy Genius team will handle all the paperwork and red tape. No commissions, no hidden fees, just more time saved for you to get back to your life. And Policy Genius doesn't make just life insurance easy. They make it easy to find home insurance, auto insurance, or disability insurance. They're your one-stop shop for financial protection. So if you need life insurance, and you do, but you're short on time, head to policygenius.com and compare quotes. Policy Genius is easy. It saves you money, and not to belabor the point, but it is fast. Go to policygenius.com. We love them. Really, really easy to use. Okay. The third guy that I want you to look for in this piece and how he's written up in this piece is going to be Michael Cohen and his connections to Felix Sater. From the piece, nice, sharp. A third troubling example Republicans point to is the special counsel's complaints against Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, which, like other court documents, included tantalizing hints of collusion. They got to save the dossier, Joe. Cohen's a key figure in the dossier, except it's all fake. Tantalizing hints of collusion that dissolved upon closer inspection. They say Mueller used the so-called Moscow Project talks, Trump's hope to build a skyscraper in Russia, to connect Trump directly to Vladimir Putin during the campaign, while withholding from the court details that would exonerate Trump of such collusion. Again, Another example of them painting Cohen and his role as a middleman. Cohen's not a good guy, by the way. I don't trust Cohen as far as I can throw him, and I couldn't throw him far.